Experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted. And experience is often the most valuable thing you have to offer. This is the Flavor of Leadership podcast. I am your host, Clint Hoops. Together, we explore the unique blend of leadership wisdom that helps top leaders consistently achieve work goals, develop personally, and find fulfillment with family. Let's get started. Welcome to the Flavor of Leadership podcast. Excited to have you here once again today. As we often do on the podcast, we speak about continually improving in your life, just a little bit better each day in your life and in your business as a leader. And we are doing the same thing here on the podcast, seeking to be just a little bit better all the time. So, in an effort to be just a little bit better and serve you even better, we're making a few changes to the podcast. And I can't quite announce all the changes yet, but over the coming weeks, there'll be some fun changes that will help to enhance your experience even better when you listen to the podcast. So stay tuned. Over the coming weeks, we'll be announcing more and more of these fun changes. So as we get started today, I want to start out with a question. So think of yourself here. Have you ever made huge plans for something that you wanted to accomplish and it didn't quite turn out like you had planned? Maybe it was a learning or a fitness goal, something that you want to do that way, like learning an instrument, learning a language, learning something else, or running your first marathon or a triathlon or doing a 5K, whatever it might be. But there was something that you were wanting to do that you failed, or it didn't turn out quite as you planned. Failure is all relative. Perhaps it was becoming a manager or a leader for the first time. And you had these expectations in your mind of how it was going to be and how you were going to lead. And man, maybe people didn't follow as readily as you thought they were going to. Or maybe you started your own business and that business didn't take off quite as quickly as you thought it would, or not in the way you thought it would. The business that you had in the end was not the business that you set out to create in the first place. I imagine all of you have had something like this happen in your life, where you imagined something was going to happen a certain way and then it didn't. So when you're thinking this in your mind, did it go according to plan? The answer is most emphatically no for most people. Now, some of you might just have things just perfectly planned out in every way. And typically, even when you have things planned out that way, it doesn't always go according to plan on these big dreams, these big things we're trying to accomplish. Leadership is one of those big things, right? Running a business, but it applies to all parts of our life and what we're doing. I love this quote by Randy Pausch, who was a professor at Carnegie Mellon University. Now, he said this. He said, "Experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted. And experience is often the most valuable thing you have to offer." Isn't that so true? Experience is what we get when we planned so well and went to execute. Action happened, and it didn't quite work out like we thought. Now, did we fail, or did we fall flat on our face? Maybe. Or maybe it just didn't have quite the effectiveness that we thought it was going to have, whatever we did, or we didn't accomplish the goal or the thing as much as we thought we would. And maybe we would define that as failure, right? Depending on what metric we're using. But in the end, something we did gain that wasn't a failure, that's never a failure, is the experience that we gained. In that quote, it says that experience is often the most valuable thing you have to offer. And so when we're working with other people and we're a leader, that experience that we've gained by failing, and not just failing at work and in business, but failing in any part of life, it teaches us something. And it's that experience that helps us learn patience, helps us learn to be a better leader and a better follower when that's needed in a business. All of these different things that we have from our experience are things that we have to offer an employer, the market, or anyone that we're needing to lead or serve. So a great friend of mine shared this with me. He said this, and I don't remember where this quote came from. I searched it up and it looks like it's an unknown quote, one of those ones that's attributed to a few different people. So I don't know. We're going to call it unknown for now. If you do know who it is for certain, go ahead and send me a message. I would love to know so I can give this to the attribute this to the right person. It says this: don't be afraid to start over again. This time you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. So anytime we attempt to do something, whether we fail by the metrics that we set up or not, doesn't really matter. In the end, we're learning something. We're learning something from what we're doing, even when it doesn't go as planned. And the next time we go to start something again, or we go to teach someone else, we're not starting from scratch. We are starting from experience. We have already experienced so much of what there is to offer. I often think of professional sports players, right? So whether it's someone in basketball, football, baseball, doesn't really matter. Somebody who's in the Olympics, these people who have been there before, they have an edge. They have something to offer other team members and themselves as they go back to compete at these incredible high levels of performance and these huge events like the Super Bowl, like the Olympics. When they go back, the experience they've had in the past at those same places makes them so much more valuable in the future. We as leaders are in the exact same boat. When we have been there, even if we've failed, right, by different metrics, the experience that we've had is so valuable. And if we let that experience drive us forward and help us improve and make better decisions and lead better, that's when the experience has actually helped us. But if we let those experiences remind us of the way that we failed, remind us that we couldn't do it before, that's not going to serve us nor the people we lead. Because that experience is the way we can adapt, right? And they are our most valuable experiences. So these experiences where things didn't go as planned, they can define us in one of two ways, like we said. They can show us and remind us how we failed, or they can show us how we can succeed in the future. And if you are listening to this podcast, you are one of those, I know, that is looking to succeed even more in the future and up your game. Thinking of this principle, it actually takes me back a number of years to one of my first jobs where I was starting a business and I was doing sales calls. And goodness gracious, any of you that have done sales, if you're in business, you're in sales one way or another, always. But I was doing sales calls. That was a big part of the business at that point as we were starting up. We didn't have a lot of business. So what did we need to do? We needed to get more business. So what did I do? I was out pounding the pavement, so to speak, literally out there pounding the pavement, trying to get people, right, at these businesses that we were marketing to use us, to use our services. But guess what? They didn't know me and I didn't know them. And in my mind, I knew that our service was fantastic. What we had to offer was amazing. And it's what these people needed. They just didn't know it yet. So I was there and I was pretty confident that I was going to be able to help these people see that our product is what they needed and to use us, to use me, to trust me. But guess what happened? Any of you out there that have done sales in the past know where this is going. I didn't get the sales. They didn't come. My phone didn't ring off the hook. I had a few calls here or there, right? We made a few sales and it was great. But there were so many places where I was stonewalled, right? I wasn't making the progress that I needed. And in this particular business, there weren't a ton of potential customers. And so I had to keep going back over and over again to some of the customers that were not incredibly kind to me. I can think of this particular day where I was sitting in my car and I needed to go in and follow up with this particular referral source. And I needed to go in there and say, hey, please use our services. And I needed to present a couple of things to them. And I was terrified. I knew what I was going to say when I went in, And yet it still terrified me because they had not been overly kind to me. But really so much of that, I realize now, hindsight looking back, was in my own head. They did not need me at the time, I didn't think, as much as I thought I needed them. And so that was playing with my head, and it put all this fear inside of me. And so I sat there. I remember I was frozen until finally I just got over my fear and went in, and it ended up going actually very well. It was one of my better times that things actually went. And it was amazing. And actually not too far later, they ended up using us. They ended up calling us and giving us business. They ended up being an amazing, amazing customer in the future. And it all kind of started when I pushed through this fear. You know, Mark Twain said this. He said, "Courage is not the lack of fear. It is acting in spite of it." It is acting in spite of it. For me on this day, I had fear, and I acted in spite of it, and I was rewarded. I often think back of what would have happened if I hadn't pushed through the fear and went in. What would I have not learned? Having that fear and having to push through that taught me so much. Because up until that point, I'd had what would be deemed a bunch of failure, right? I wasn't having as much success as I thought I was going to have. And it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And pushing through this, even in spite of the fear, and then in the future starting to get business from these people, helped me realize and helped me learn so much. Having it be hard on the front end and then having the great reward on the back end taught me so much. It helped shape my experiences for the future. My expectations changed. My preparation changed in the future when I was doing other similar sales activities. I was prepared in a different way. I learned how to work with people in a way that I didn't know before. And all of these things made me better in the future. I wasn't starting from scratch. I was starting from experience, right? With these future businesses that I was helping to run. And I'm telling you, going through the struggle at this point in my career was amazing. Now looking back, at the time it hurt so bad. It was so hard. But now looking back with a different lens, I am so grateful that I was able to learn those things. And it's made me better today in so many ways. The experience that we gain is truly wisdom, right? It's not just knowledge, right? Knowledge we can pick up anywhere. Wisdom is a little deeper, right? It's something we internalize a little more. It's something that will change us a little bit more. You know, wisdom is often the thing that we acquire when we didn't ask for it. Knowledge are all of those things that we seek to learn often, but wisdom we often acquire when we didn't ask for it. And so it often hits a little bit deeper for us. Another quote that I love is by Marjorie Pay Hinckley, and she said this. She said, "Everything you are learning now is preparing you for something else." Everything you are learning now is preparing you for something else. So what are you learning right now? What's a trial you're going through? What is really hard? What are you working through? And what is it preparing you for? Something bigger, something better, right? If you're listening to this show, you're not someone who likes to live small. You're someone who wants to do something great, be better. So the experience you're having, how are they shaping you into the person that you need to be in the future? The person that your people at work need you to be. What kind of leader are you becoming? So much of it depends on how you react to your experiences and how you let them shape you. It reminds me of heroes, right? You have heroes all over in history, right? Real people, as well as fiction stories, right? And so many of these stories are based on what we wish we could do or what someone has actually done, actually accomplished. And we look at these heroes and we think, that is what we want to do. That is who we want to be. We look at those heroes in our life and we think, that's who we want to be. But we often forget that the heroes in real life or in fiction always were prepared to be the hero through their trials and their experiences. These stories that we see follow true principles most of the time. These people had to struggle and be prepared so they could be that hero and fulfill their ultimate purpose, right? What they were meant to do. And so these stories are not just for heroes and for fairy tales. Our trials are preparing us for our purpose, for what we can accomplish, what we want to accomplish. Once again, we get to choose how we view the trials and the struggles that we have and the failures, right, that we have. We get to choose if we're going to get back on the horse, so to speak, and start again with the experience that we've gained. You know what we do when we don't have experience in something and we're trying to lead? It's a little harder, right? Haven't you done that? Where it's hard and you're like, man, I'm trying to lead somebody, but I've never done that. And that's okay too. We can still lead people. There are so many different ways, and that in and of itself helps teach us and learn. I know I've had times as I was starting my career and even to today where I'll be speaking with people that have had experiences that I've never had. They've been through things that I've never been through. And so we can learn from each other. And so don't be intimidated. Don't feel like you need to always be the smartest person in the room. We can get knowledge from all the people we have and don't have to have all of the answers in order to lead and lead well. We don't have to make all the mistakes in the book to be able to learn from others. We get a chance to learn in so many different ways. So one thing we need to be careful of, I will tell you as well, that I've been guilty of in the past is when working with people that are struggling and they're in the midst of the struggle, it's hard to share a flowery story where you were struggling and then prevailed in the end, right? You have to read the situation just right. Sometimes that can go a little south on you, right? Where you're sharing these examples with someone, but they're not in the right place to receive it. So this is where you as a leader have to read the room, so to speak, and know how best to help people. Sometimes just because you learned an experience doesn't mean that you have to share it in exactly the same way, but you can still use your knowledge to help and to lead. Sometimes the best thing you can do is ask better questions so that people can discover the right direction for themselves. Sometimes using your knowledge that you have and the insights you have that you've learned from your past really can help you ask the best questions. And that's often the best way to help the people around you and those that you're leading. Often the experiences we have in the past will happen and we'll repeat them again. Have you ever done that? Where you have failed at something in the past, and then you've repeated it again when really you could have connected the dots, right? You could have connected the dots and seen your experiences from the past, but you didn't. So that is why I love journaling and recording my thoughts and insights. And I love to do it at a few different places along the way. I love to do it, record my insights when things are going well. I love to record my thoughts and insights when I'm in the midst of struggles. Many of the stories that I've shared on the podcast have all come from experiences I've had and from journals that I've written to help record where I'm at and what I was doing in the middle of the struggle. And as well as at the end of a struggle, when I have the hindsight view of looking back and seeing the progress that I made and some of the things that happened at the end of that tough time. And all of these different insights can be useful and helpful to you. The problem is they're not going to be there for you if you don't record them. And the best time to record them is as they're happening. So where do you record your insights that you receive? Right now, I'm going to specifically talk about business insights. But this can be true for all parts of your life, all different insights that you receive as a parent, as a friend, as just somebody trying to improve and be better. But in business, tough times will come. You know that. You know it's going to be tough. And you know there are going to be times when things go really well. And this cycle goes, it ebbs and flows. It ebbs and flows. So where do you record your insights for work? Do you write them down when things are tough? Do you write your thoughts that you came at the end of a tough struggle? And even if you do capture these thoughts, could you find them if you needed them? Do you have them in a method where you could search, or there's a table of contents in a journal or the method that you use? If not, this is the challenge for the week. If you have not been keeping a journal of these type of things, these type of insights, start one now. Don't overcomplicate it. It can be a note on your phone. It can be a handwritten journal, which is one of the things I prefer with these type of insights. There's something about it that helps to internalize it in your mind when you handwrite it. Don't worry about getting a fancy journal. Do it in a notebook and write insights journal, business insights journal, to write it down. And when things happen, write them down. Put a simple table of contents on the front page if you want. Write the page you're on so that you can go back and quickly access and find the things you need when you need them. Right now, when you're thinking about this, you're thinking, oh, I'm writing this so that years into the future, I can look back. I'm telling you, sometimes looking back a month or looking back a few weeks or 6 months, man, can provide amazing insight to see the growth you've had and to see the trials you've been able to overcome. Things can shift so quickly. Once again, the importance is to record it. And don't overcomplicate it, but then to go back and read it. Go back and read it. That's when you'll have the benefits of the insights. It's when you go back and see that. For me, during this time, part of the reason I remember this time where I was struggling so much that we shared, right? When I was doing those sales calls, part of the reason it's so vivid for me is because I went back and relived that by my journal in the past. It's helped me remember how tough it was to be at that point in my career and in my journey. You can gain the same thing yourself. So go and do that today if you don't have something. Get somewhere to write these things down. You will be grateful that you did. You got this. Until next week. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of the Flavor of Leadership podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast player. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback for us, you can reach me directly at flavorofleadership.com. Thanks for listening.